31 drawings. 71 hours of drawing time. Jesus Christ. 1 month to do it in. In this 6-episode series, I will be showing you all 31 drawings that I have done during this month. All with time lapses, all with voiceover. I shall be breaking down every technique that I have used, every technique I have developed throughout this month. Welcome everybody. Welcome to
Inktober!
So the first one was fish. I was really happy with fish. The way it turned out was really nice because I thought of this the night before, and this being my first Inktober, I wanted to make sure that I could definitely do it, you know? I mean, it's not unusual for me to finish a drawing in a day by any means, but trying to do one every single day and be creative every day, you want to be able to start off well, you know? So I came up with this the night before while I was going to sleep. I was thinking about fish and what I could do for that, and I really got hooked on this idea of like this massive anglerfish, and as you can see here, this deep sea diver in the foreground. Originally they were looking at the fish, and then as I was sketching it in here, I realized it looked actually a little bit more like it was being pulled towards, and I thought, actually, you know what, that's actually a cooler effect. So that happens a lot with drawings, and I generally kind of just go with it. If a drawing doesn't do exactly what I want it to do, I don't really fixate on that. There's an advantage and a disadvantage. I think when I'm just drawing for fun, then it's perfectly fine, but it's probably a bit of an issue if you're dealing with clients or something who want a very specific thing from you. But it does overall, I think, make me a lot more happy with the output of my drawings, because when you imagine a drawing, you know, people often think about how I know exactly what I want it to look like, and I feel like I have the skills to draw it, but for some reason I just can't get it from my mind to the paper. And I think the reason for that is that often you can really only think about a third to maybe 2/3 of a you can only imagine about a third to 2/3 of an image, right? Like, look around you, like for 2 seconds, and then close your eyes. How much can you remember? I always find that it's about a third to 2/3, but that's just me. It has held up in some like kinda quote-unquote mind-reading tests, this was on Minefield, which is very interesting. I recommend that, but then again, I literally do not remember what episode it was, so that recommendation isn't particularly helpful. Here I'm doing little iron bars. I'm trying to do a bit of rim lighting here, which actually a lot of the time here it doesn't particularly make sense. Well, it's less about making sense here, it's actually just more about making sure that the shape is clear to the audience. I usually go with something more like realism, because I like it when things are realistic. I use soft shading and things like that. I don't usually do cell shading. So I like doing soft shading with things so that I can use gradients and stuff like that, and I can just do things the way that the world actually looks, because I can know how the world looks, but I can't always know, like, how do I put this? I don't always know how to make the world look simply. You know, I don't know how to represent the world in a simplistic way sometimes. I find that a lot harder. It's kind of easier for me to replicate something that actually does exist. I don't think I'm alone in that, but I definitely think that's on the rarer side of artists. Here I'm using a sort of Here I'm just sort of block shading in, but as you can see, I also do that sort of thing where I think it's called feathering, actually. It might be where you like divide up your line. Yeah, you see there I'm using line shading, as I sometimes call it, where it's, you're not block shading, you can just sort of fade it out, but not by changing your opacity, just by changing the density of your shading lines. Sort of like cross-hatching, which is also another ink skill. You'll notice actually with these early drawings that I try and make them look like they're ink styled, which traditionally Inktober is not done digitally like I'm doing it. Traditionally it's done on paper using ink, as the name suggests. But I wanted to do it digitally because I think doing 31 drawings as it is hard enough. That was Fish. Moving on to Wisp now. Now Wisp was... I should explain myself here a little bit. I wanted to do a Hollow Knight one, okay? And I was looking at the prompts and I thought I saw a few where it could work. Armored would work well. Bulky, which was literally the next day, would work perfectly well. But I was impatient, so instead I did Wisp. And my logic was, I thought about, like the Wisps in Brave, where they're like those little ghosts. So I thought, okay, if Wisp is like a ghost, then the ghost equivalent in Hollow Knight is like the dream bosses, which it just got layers and layers of separation from the actual prompt. What's more, this one I actually colour, because the day before I saw someone do a koi carp, and it was beautiful. It was done with actual inks, but most importantly, they actually coloured it. And I thought, well, okay then, if colouring's allowed, get in, lads. John's about to do some colouring in, which was fine. It wasn't particularly in the inky style. Even then, it was. This one really was just a bit of a mess of me not really knowing what to do, not knowing how many Photoshop tools I was allowed to use. I just didn't know what my own rules were at this point. It was a bit of a mess. So I like the picture well enough, I just don't think it particularly fits Wisp, and I'm not really sure it fits what I was going for at the time. Next up we have Bulky. This one, as opposed to Wisp, went exactly how I wanted to. In fact, I came up with this one, I think, before I came up with Wisp. It was part of the reason why I did the Hollow Knight one on that day. Because I thought this idea of like this massive man, he's just sitting at the kids' table, and when I came to actually drawing it, I thought, oh, it wouldn't be good if he was actually also in a room like that. That's way too small for him. So I think subconsciously I was thinking of Mr. Incredible, or Bob in The Incredibles, where he's got like his tiny car and his tiny office cubicle. I definitely get that kind of energy from this picture. But I like this one. I definitely think it fits the brief well. I don't know why, but I particularly like the head bumping against the light look. I feel like that was an effect that just worked pretty much how I wanted it to. I think as well, I also used I think I did a better job with replicating the effect, the ink style with this one. Like I say, I don't actually continue that throughout. I just go to a normal style. But out of all of them, this probably has the best inky style. That I tried to add some texture to the trousers. Decided not to. So there you go. It's a simple one, but I definitely feel like it works well. Here we have Radio. Now this one I really did. I came up with it, I think the first time I saw Radio, I came up with this idea, and although I tried to think of other ideas, as alternate things if this one didn't work, I just couldn't. I had to do this one. And I'm so glad I did, because it It might be my favorite out of this video, I'm not sure. There are a lot of really good ones, but I like this one, yeah. So he's listening to the Arecibo message, and the Arecibo message, for those who aren't aware, is a signal that they sent out into space. They've sent it out multiple times. I think it was on Voyager 1. It's a message that is encoded in a certain way, and in a different take of this, I explained how it was recorded, and I tell you what, I'm re-recording this for a reason, because that was boring and confusing as all hell, so if you're actually interested, I recommend listening to it, but if you decode it, you get this image. And that's fine. It's actually not a good image, like that, it's supposed to represent, I think that's like humans beaming up the signal, but it's in this weird pixelated way, and like humans can't decipher it most of the time, let alone aliens. But I like the idea of it, and I like the idea that aliens would actually be out there like tuning in to human radio, or like Arecibo radio. Arecibo is like some kind of band or something. I just like the idea of the message, or the idea of the picture. I think this is a good time to mention as well, I use the pencil tool sometimes when I'm doing line art. And this is, if for anyone who was like me, who was more of a lineless artist and didn't really do line art, one thing that was super helpful for me to get better at it was using the pencil tool, because sometimes it's easier to think of it, when using digital art, it's easier to think of it less as lines and more as pixels, because that's when you're dealing with rasters, like we are here, where images are made up of pixels. That actually is pretty useful. So actually the first properly good line art stuff that I did was using a square brush that I made, and I still really like those pictures. I think they were very effective. Here, what I'm doing is I'm using the pen tool, and you can just change one end of it. You can like change the point it's coming from. It's actually really useful for vanishing points and things like that, because then you can put a stroke on the pen tool. Also, here I'm using actions, which are basically like a macro. A macro is basically like a custom shortcut where you can do a certain function, and I also set that shortcut for that macro to be Control-Alt-A. If that didn't make much sense, that's okay. It was probably very confusing the way I worded it, but I like it. Again, one of my favorites, this one. Next we have Blade. I was really happy with this one. This was actually my dad's idea to do Excalibur, and I think I just like the effect of this one. I feel like it's got a good, how to put it, it's set up well, good composure, I suppose. There's an actual word for it which I will remember and shout randomly at some point throughout this recording, but I think this looks quite nice. This is the point where I decided to depart from the ink style, and I kind of went into a style that I'm more comfortable with. As it happens, I actually did intend to make it look more realistic, because I wanted to work on my reflection look, that metallic look for the blade, but I still think it looks nice. It ends up having a bit more of a glow to it. Also, my original and a headcanon, if you like, for this was that the blade had never really been found, had never been retrieved by Arthur, which is why you see here the vines growing up on it. It may still work anyway, because I think the blade had actually been there for a long time. I'm gonna be honest, not a big fan of Camelot. I've never really gotten the hype around it. it's a fine story, I guess. It's just it gets old. It doesn't deserve the amount of remakes it gets. Okay, like it gets told a lot. I was very happy with that diamond, by the way, on top, that crystal. And I think that was, I think, pretty good effect. I don't really use reference much anymore, and I really should, but I didn't for that, which makes me even more proud of it. I think a sort of simple forest in the background. This one has a bit of a cartoony look, actually, even though it's soft shading and more in my style, which definitely has, like I said, a bit more of a realism base. But it still has, I think, a good effect to it. Even though I'm getting already a little bit of that sunlight effect in the grass, and I quite like that effect. It's really nice when you're drawing and the image feels like it's just emerging from your drawings here, you know? Oh, it's hard to describe, but when you can see an effect working the way you want it to, and often it works even better than I think it will, that's always so satisfying. I'm getting some simple shading in here. Once again, using the pen tool. This time I'm actually using a layer mask, which before the pen tool and layer mask were actually things that I'm a little bit new to understanding, but I understand them much better now. And I tell you what, if you want some good practice with Photoshop tools, try drawing 31 pictures throughout a month. You get really good at them. And indeed, as I sort of hinted to in the intro for this, I have actually developed some new techniques with this. I mean, I'm not saying they're necessarily wholly original. Someone else may have come up with them before. But yeah, I also had a little bit of those shines there. Those are just done with a couple of brushes. But I like those. A little twinkle. Yeah, I like the effect of this one. Rodent is up next, and this one was interesting. I started off because I found out that there were loads of these brushes that came default with Photoshop, but you have to activate through the settings. And so I found these pencil simulating brushes, which I'm using here, and they're really nice to work with. Actually, they really do feel like you're using a pencil. And especially when it comes to colouring in, it looks and feels like pencil crayon. So I started off here by taking a normal rat, which was what you saw me do originally with the black brush there. And so I tried to do that fairly accurately, and then over the top of it with the red, I made it look sort of more monstrous, and then I kind of merged them together, and now I'm doing the more detailed line art. As you can see, the line art is actually kind of in grey because that's what comes default with the brush that I'm using. But later on I realised that it's not actually black, and I changed it to being black, and I darkened the whole thing. I think that the brush really allowed me to get that kind of almost gritty texture of how I imagine rats, and also just gave it an extra kind of tone to the scene. Which I really liked. You know, now I'm looking at the colour, I'm not sure even then I'm using a completely dark black. Oh, no, I'm definitely not. Wow, that's incredible. I didn't even realise that. Well, clearly, this is like the third or fourth time it's the fourth time at least that I'm watching this video back, and I'm only just noticing. I've had to record these quite a few times. Yeah, I'm doing some colouring in. Originally I wasn't planning on changing the brush size, and I thought, oh yeah, get that authentic look, which I kind of keep doing, but actually, as you can see, I changed the background colour to be more reflective of the actual colour that I wanted, and then on top I'm just adding this sort of sepia look. I think I also darkened that, and I do a lot with gradients and shading to make it look darker. Here we go, here's the shading that I'm putting in here. Very nice. There I do actually increase the size of the brush, so a little bit cheaty, not the same sort of just using a pencil look as it was before, but if you want to make it seem like an analog art tool, then I guess this is like using, I don't know, a charcoal stick, something like that, or a graphite stick. There I've accidentally put a big old gash across his nose without meaning to. What I'm doing here is I'm getting a good selection around him so that I can get actually a solid background to him, because before he was completely transparent. Now I can actually give him a proper background so that I can change the actual background color to whatever I like. Here I've made it black to make it look even more creepy. I'll also be adding gradients and stuff over it. Here we go. That adds even more shadow to it. I've put some blood on the teeth and made the teeth a bit more yellow, because that always just makes it look more monstrous. Once again, using a layer mask, which actually ends up being pretty pointless, but that just allows me to add a little bit of a coloured light to it. Just very soft, almost unnoticeable light. Yeah, so that's Rodent. Lovely. Right. Now here's the real star of this episode. Fancy. Some context. Blade was difficult because, I changed my art style to be something that takes a little bit more time. So it took a little bit of getting used to doing that every day. So Blade actually ended up taking 2 days as well. I was busy that day, so Blade ended up taking 2 days, which in turn meant that Rodent took 2 days, which meant I was about half a day behind, which was very problematic. So I decided, well, I don't want to continue to be half a day behind, so I did Fancy here, and Fancy took 40 minutes, literally 40 minutes. I didn't do a sketch, as you can see here. This isn't some detailed sketch. This is the lineup. This is what you got. You gotta deal with this. It's all we can afford. He's just, I just love it. He's just this weird, janky old man. There's very little to talk about with this one. I suppose we can talk about how I'm using the pencil tool here. Even though I'm doing the line art with a brush tool, I'm doing the coloring in mostly with a pencil tool, because that allows you to color in the lines more exactly. Again, thinking in terms of pixels. I barely even zoomed in on this one. In fact, did I zoom in once on this picture? I don't think I did. That would require like too much attention, I feel. That's too much effort. Oh, I was so happy with this. I was so proud of this one as well, because you can't be disappointed with a drawing that takes you 40 minutes. That's the thing. Like, it's just such a minute amount of time that there's like there's no shame. Yeah, here I'm making, these are actually pretty cool, right? I'm making coins here. Kinda. See, that doesn't look great, but look, when you stack them, ooh, actually look pretty decent, I feel. The problem I had with this one was trying to save on time. Each one of those coins in the background is its own layer. Each stack is its own group of layers. So, as you can see here, also me just adding in a drop shadow, because why not just stress out my computer even more? Look at me thinking I could do some kind of directional blow in the background for some reason. I don't think so, my friend. So actually the scratch disk got really full, which meant that my Photoshop was just not happy with me at all. But I managed to get it done, and now I have this masterpiece. I was going to call it my magnum opus, but that comes in later. Oh, wait until you see my magnum opus. It will not be for a few episodes yet, but it's pretty good. There you have it, the first 7 drawings. That first week definitely really helped me going forward, because I had the first experience of being behind a little bit, and it showed that I could recover even if I got a bit behind. It showed that I didn't have to stick to pretending it's ink, even though it's very much digital. I do intend to do next year. I do intend to do that in using analog inks. No promises though, because who knows where I'm going to be in a year's time and whether I'm going to be in a position to do that. But that's the plan as it stands. So please join next week, where we start off with teeth, which was interesting, and finish off with dunes, which, trust me, gets very, very interesting. Thank you for watching, folks. Goodbye.